Hello there, aspiring tennos. I am back again with another build. This one I am particularly proud of. But before we get into that, why haven't you joined the Discord yet? We're trying to build a community here, and if you are enjoying the Still Path videos, I think you would like to know that there's a lot of very competent players over here on the Discord who would be happy to help you. And also, if you haven't subscribed yet, why not? Anyways, let's talk some Warframe. And today we are here with IVARA Prime specifically. So the build for IVARA is basically just a good amount of strength and a decent amount of efficiency. We only need enough duration that this can ensnare the acolytes long enough that we can kill them and stay able to see us while we are invisible. We need some kind of CC so that they don't just one-shot us when they spawn. Alright, then we're using Empowered Quiver for additional, and you can see here, for additional critical damage while we are on the wire. We're using Primed Flow, of course, and for our arcanes, we're going to use Arcane Acceleration. Let me just go ahead and perfect. And as you'll see here, it's when we crit, which we'll do all the time, we have a 30% chance to get 90% fire rate, which is very nice and absolutely needed for this. I prefer to use Arcane Energize, but you could slot something else in here if you put on a little bit more duration instead. We're using Mecha Empower, that's very important. Also the other Mecha mod here, the rest of them are in our companion, but more on that in a little bit. And Rolling Guard is pretty much also mandatory, as you will need it to save you. You can't afford to be in the operator state too much. You would rather be able to still attack the enemies. Now for the weapon, which is basically the main part of this build, we're using the new bow, the NATARUK, which I would be willing to claim is the best primary weapon in the game right now. So I'm using primary Deadhead here, but if you're going for really long runs, it's probably better to go with Merciless, just in case something goes completely haywire. It can be a little bit difficult to build the buff back up again, so you might as well be a little bit extra safe and use this one. Alright. Let's take a look at the build itself. With the perfect shot, you can't really trust this number because we're using galvanized scope for additional critical chance, but it doesn't show up here. But you will have guaranteed red crits as long as you're hitting headshots, which is very easy because the projectile is so huge. And then we're using critical delay, which is why we need a little bit extra attack speed to bring it back up from that. Multi-shot. Aptitude, because this is the projectile, the arrow on the perfect and the full shot is the same family as the Acaplasmor. Therefore this buff stacks multiplicatively, and why that happens I have no idea, and neither does DE, but trust me when I tell you this gives you a lot of extra damage. Our damage type I'm using here, and the Bane mod is specifically for Grenier, so keep that in mind. You'll have to change that if you're against another faction. Hush, because it's actually a loud bow and you'll be pulled out of stealth every time unless you have this equipped. So this is specifically for the IVARA build. And we have, of course, Hunter Munition, so whenever you crit an enemy, you will also bleed them. Well, 30% of the time you will. Critical damage, pretty obviously. So that's all there is to that. That's also while we're at it. I have this kit gun here, and this is just, you know, some extra. I'm using Energizing Shot on this because this particular kit gun can actually, it's a AoE weapon, and normally, as you can see, this cannot be used on AoE weapons, but that doesn't count for kit guns. And suppress for the same reason as Hush. Then for our companion, we go and take a look here. The important part is the Mecha Recharge and the Mecha Overdrive. Okay, and the rest is just nice. This is good for this is good for a little bit of extra energy sometimes, and just a little bit of survivability in case it catches a stray bullet. But as you can see, this is not a very maximized build because you don't need it. It's all about the mecha mods. Now for our operator setup, or maybe I should say our drifter setup. Anyways, so here it is. For our focus, we're going with Warframe, which I pretty much just declared to be useless, but okay, well. In this particular build, it's actually pretty good. So this one right here is actually pretty solid. This gives you 5 seconds invulnerability, which is pretty much all you need to kill the acolyte. And if it isn't enough, you just dash again and give yourself another 5 seconds. And then we're also going to be using Sonic dash, right? It's pretty nice, and it's definitely the most important part of the skill tree, but you know, if there's something you want, go ahead and pick it. Also, you might want to be careful about not using this if you have a lower energy pool. Also, now I don't want to change anything. Also, if we look here under equipment, very importantly, I'm using Magus Repair, which allows me to heal my Warframe for 25% of the maximum health every second, and also all my allies, which I won't have any because this is a solo-oriented build. Then we also have Magus Lockdown, which essentially up to 10 enemies in range whenever you dash is stunned for 4 seconds, which is very nice. Combining this with our focus tree, we have a way to locking down the acolytes, which makes it a little bit easier to damage them, which is pretty much what this entire setup is for. So at the very last moment, I decided that there is a more optimal build. However, I will say that this is not the optimal build unless you are aiming for more than 3 hours in survival, okay? Because you don't have any grouping ability anymore, so it doesn't feel nearly as good to play early on. But in the late game, where yes, it's nice you can group up enemies, but if you can't kill them, not so good. So yes, we are using Eclipse, and in case you don't know, the way that Eclipse work is that it is a multiplicative weapon damage bonus. So it says it gives you 300% more damage, and that's exactly what it does. So whatever damage you do before you activate this ability, you will deal 3 times as much damage, which is very powerful and it's kind of rare. For example, Chroma's Vex armor, the bonus you get there is multiplicative. No, sorry, it's additive, and this is multiplicative. Okay, so that's the difference. Because of this, we can drop our range completely and focus on our duration, which actually means that we will drain even less energy per second while invisible, and it also means that we have to cast this much less often. Let's go ahead and take a look at how this build actually works then. So firstly, it works by just dealing a lot of damage. That might sound a little bit dumb, but when you hit something, it just dies. That's part of how it works. Of course, you have to be in the light for it to work properly, but you deal so much, especially if you can get a slash proc, you will just kill the enemies, as you can see here. But that's not all there is to it, because we want to use the mega set to its full potential. So if you see this mark here above the enemy's head, I'm gonna try and land a slash on him there, and you'll see it gets passed on to all of the enemies, which then also dies. And with the trash enemies, at least up to around level 3000, you can still kill them with the toxin damage as well. So that's basically how it works. Let's go ahead and move on to some actual gameplay. Finally, I'll leave you with some gameplay in the background while I quickly explain how this build works and how to play it, though it is quite simple and I'd almost say self-explanatory. Well, you make sure to sit invisible with your 3 all the time, always roll and never bullet jump, otherwise you will be seen. Then you just find a good camping spot and you start killing all of the enemies. If you have the whip claw equipped, then I advise using that before getting up on the wire, and otherwise you just want to stand in the light to get the most amount of damage. The only thing that's slightly challenging when it comes to this build is acolytes, but as soon as they spawn, you just cast your whip claw on them, and then they won't be able to attack you. If you end up being a little bit too slow and the acolyte might be able to get in and attack, you have your shield gate to save you, then you can simply roll afterwards and then you'll be good. So as long as you stay focused for those few seconds when the acolyte is on screen, then you're gonna be just fine. Anyways, I wish you the best of luck farming steel essence, and maybe subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.